Hello, fellow cleantech enthusiasts or professionals. You're watching another episode of the Green New Perspective, your go-to podcast when you want to learn more about cleantech, nature tech, biotech, and agri-tech industry. This episode is proudly sponsored by New Perspective, a next-gen marketing agency working with cleantech clients only. And if you want to learn more about our sponsor, please check out more details in the description of this video. So in this episode, we are hosting Edward Chiang, who is a co-founder of Moment Energy, Canadian company that is giving retired EV batteries a second life. So in this episode, we are going to talk about why repurposing or recycling lithium batteries is crucial rather than letting them add up in landfills. So join us as we explore the implications for the automotive community and beyond. So can you introduce yourself to our audience and then introduce your company, Moment Energy, and tell us more about your core mission?
So I'm Eddie, or Edward, co-founder and CEO at Moment Energy. And what we do is we repurpose electric vehicle batteries into stationary energy storage. Started this company about 4 years ago now, and we really were digging into the core problem of what happens to electric vehicle batteries at end of life. And what we found is majority of them, unfortunately, aren't properly disposed of because the cost of recycling is prohibitive for consumers as well as for automakers. So for us, our mission is to ensure that these batteries that often have 80% life left on average still can be repurposed for a stationary storage application for 10, 15, 20 years.
And can you tell me more about the problems with batteries that we have at the moment?
Yeah. In terms of the new lithium side, there's a huge supply constraint. What we're finding is that a lot of automakers are buying up all the lithium material because they're able to pay significantly more for each gram of lithium compared to stationary storage applications. So what we're finding is EV manufacturers, they're buying up all the materials. New stationary storage manufacturers, they don't have enough materials. But at the same time, at end of life, there's a copious amount of end of life EV batteries that aren't being recycled. So this really provides a huge opportunity where we can then use that end of life battery, EV battery, and serve that need for stationary storage.
Mm-hmm. And when you founded your company, so what was the, let's say, the initial idea for your brand identity, and how did it evolve throughout the years?
Yeah, absolutely. The initial portion of the brand identity was essentially through my time. I was living a little bit north of Canada, doing nuclear energy research for the federal government. And what happened in 2018?
Wow.
Yeah, what happened in 2018 was a tornado hit Ottawa, our capital. So we were a small town of 1,000 people, small town of PhDs, and what happened was Ottawa was out of power for 4 hours, while we were out of power for an entire day, 24 hours. And having grown and been born in Vancouver, in Canada, a bigger city, I've just never experienced something like that. Usually outages are only for maybe 1 or 2 hours maximum. So I started asking the locals and asked them, how often does this happen? That's, over 24 hours. And they said, yeah, this is a short outage. Every year we experience outages for up to a week. And that was just very surprising to me because we were only 2 hours north of Ottawa, our capital. And in terms of what really started the company and the passion for me was if Canadians and Americans are facing this yearly, what's the rest of the world? And that's really why we started this company, to ensure that all humans have access to clean and reliable energy.
And where do you see the biggest challenges on the market that you
Yeah,
face with the company? Yeah.
yeah. In terms of the markets, what we're finding is just making sure that batteries are deployed safely. What we're seeing even in new lithium companies, we hear that people are just deploying projects because it is a way to make money, and a lot of people are not as genuine, and they're just deploying energy storage, new lithium, new chemistry batteries, and whatnot. But they're not really putting so much effort into the safety and the certifications required to deploy safe batteries, and that's exactly what our focus at Moment Energy. These batteries that we're repurposing from EVs have gone through all the safety certifications of a vehicle, which is really stringent because, ideally is these batteries are still safe even if you crash them into a wall at 200 kilometers an hour. Now, ensuring that that safe process from the automotive perspective is now brought into the stationary storage perspective is very important to us. So our focus over the past 4 years is to ensure that we create the safest systems in the industry.
Yeah, can you explain for our audiences who don't know much about lithium batteries, what's the actual problem with that? Because lithium is often talked about as like a miracle solution to climate change. So
Yeah,
what's the
great
big
question.
issue with lithium? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly, and that's why we're repurposing. I mean,
Yeah.
the whole problem with lithium is typically the lithium material is mined by huge conglomerates, right? And no matter if it's Tesla, Apple, or whatever company, they all say that they're mining their batteries sustainably, but in reality, they all get their batteries by this one or two mining companies.
I
And
mean,
unfortunately,
mining can never be totally sustainable. So yeah,
exactly.
something they have to say, not just for the lithium.
Totally. Especially within lithium batteries, there's terrible, terrible mining practices happening in the Congo, for example. And, human lives are being put at stake there. And that's really why our customers are really interested in second life batteries, because they've gone through the process. And now, rather than just throwing these batteries away on one end, or rather than mining and refining new lithium material for the stationary storage application, why don't we just take batteries that have already gone through that, so that we don't need to mine new lithium for stationary storage? So it's significantly more environmentally, on the GHG side, environmentally friendly, as well as socially, not requiring, the hugely negative mining practices that are happening in Africa to grow.
Hmm. And how do you market yourself to distinguish from another competitors in the market?
Yeah, safety. So,
Uh-huh.
yeah, what's been really amazing is end of September, we actually became the first and only company in North America with UL certification. UL
Wow.
certification stands for Underwriters Laboratory Certification here in North America, and you need the certification to, one, prove you're the safest solution, that you can then commercially deploy projects. And for us, we've been commercially deploying projects for a lot of off-grid communities where they're very diesel dependent, reducing their diesel consumption by 70% for 4 years now. And now when we're going on grid that requires these certifications, we essentially are the only company that has a certification to prove that we are the safest, while other companies essentially have not. They've been deploying projects that are not certified on grid. And what that does is that endangers your customers. If, knock on wood, if there's ever a fire event, that entire building is uninsured. So that customer is being put in major environmental and safety risk as well. So for us, our differentiator is ensuring that on the technology side, we are the safest. So we have our own proprietary technology to keep batteries safe, called the battery management system, electrical systems, hardware systems for fire propagation, all the way to getting a third party body reviewer to come in and ensure that we are the safest.
And do you feel like you need to educate like both the general public and then the potential investor and potential future clients about the all the implication you mentioned about the dangers with lithium and then recycling of batteries?
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of the education on the consumer side, as well as the governmental side, is what typically
Hmm.
happens to these EV batteries. A lot of governments don't realize what's happening. For example, the U.S. Department of Energy have internal studies showing that even after all of the billions of dollars investment they put into recycling, still recycling is only looking to capture about 7% of all end-of-life EV batteries, which means 93% of all end-of-life EV batteries, where are they going to go? Are they going to go into landfills? Hopefully not, right? So that's why there
Hmm.
needs to be more recyclers, needs to be more second life companies repurposing the batteries over 20 years to ensure these batteries aren't ending up in landfills. But at the same time, that's why we started this company. We started this company because we talked to local consumers who had electric vehicles, and we asked them, hey, your vehicle's reached end of life. So what does your dealership tell you to do with the batteries? What does the automaker say? And the automaker says, yeah, send it to your recycler. And then they go take it to the local recycler, and the recycler says, sure, I'll charge you $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 just to recycle your electric vehicle battery. And these prices are prices that consumers can't pay, right?
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
ultimately, what we found is in countries like in China, as well as the half of all European Union countries, which is great, they've mandated by law about 5 years ago that all batteries have to be either repurposed or recycled, and it's the automaker's responsibility, which is much better for the for the entire market because automakers can afford it. They just don't want to.
Mhm.
And they are the
Mhm.
ones that should be responsible for all end of life EV batteries.
Yeah, yeah, and other consumers, that's for sure, yeah. Because that way, I mean, it's not really, you don't know if it's going to get recycled, and that's should be mandatory, yes. So you had a big collaboration with Mercedes-Benz Energy. So
Yes.
can you tell me what does that collaboration means for you? And collaboration with bigger companies, like uh, how come that collaboration actually, what kind of impact it has on smaller producers, smaller companies, smaller startups within the clean tech space?
Yeah. I'll start off by talking about what the automakers think about this whole process.
Mm-hmm.
So automakers like Mercedes, Nissan, a lot of the other automakers like Renault, they've actually deployed second life EV battery projects before. They did it about, let's say, 5 years ago was the time frame. And what they really saw was there's amazing value because there's still 80% life left after you're done driving these electric vehicles for 10 to 15 years. But
Mm-hmm.
secondly, is they also realized, okay, building and designing stationary storage is completely different from creating an electric vehicle. So instead, since the laws are forcing us to disassemble our battery packs, either send them to recyclers or send it to a repurposer, let's just stop there. We'll be the supplier of the batteries. And then we're going to partner with companies like Moment Energy to ensure that their batteries are repurposed. And that relationship between us and Mercedes, but at this point, we work with every single automaker other than the Chinese automakers as of right now, on R&D or on supply chain processes for over the past 4 years now. And it's a very symbiotic relationship there. We ensure that they are fulfilling the legal requirements and the environmental requirements, that their batteries are not being thrown away, but instead are being repurposed. And then after we repurpose, we ensure that our batteries are recycled. And at the same time, they are happy to essentially co-develop on projects. We co-develop on R&D, and they help us with a lot of R&D of our own battery systems as well to ensure that we can integrate their electric vehicle batteries.
And do you feel that this kind of collaboration means a lot for your brand positioning, for your future collaborations? Is it something that you would definitely recommend for other companies, not just like yours, but all over the clean tech space?
Yeah, absolutely. So for us, it's a little bit more interesting. The reason why we became the first and only company in North America with UL certification is because we had these relationships. A lot of these certifications actually require, for example, in our industries, certain data sheets on how these batteries were manufactured even before they entered the electric vehicle. So in those cases, it's actually impossible to get certification without working directly with an automaker, which is what our competitors did. And that's why they've been trying for 3+ years and they still haven't been able to get the certification. But for us, we were able to do it. So working directly with the big corporations is helpful. And as long as you know how to navigate it as a partnership rather than, you feeling like you become a subsidiary of a big corporation.
Yeah, that's true. You also raised a significant seed funding recently. So how does this funding contributed to your company's growth and development as well? Yeah.
I mean, pretty massively, right? For us, that's
Hmm.
why we are one of the only Second Life companies that have developed and deployed so many projects. We have 7 projects online in the field. They're customer sites. They're not pilot projects. Our systems have to work. Unlike other Second Life companies where they hadn't risen enough, so then they're kind of just pilot projects in their own backyard, all the way to developing those strong relationships with the automakers, right, and our partners. If you're a small startup that hasn't risen any money, then you could disappear at any moment. But by raising substantial enough capital, for example, for us, we have 10 million. We actually have, we're in talks right now for another 50 right now with the US government as well as investors. That ensures that you're a company that's not going to just disappear tomorrow. That's why the automakers are so reluctant to work with other of our Second Life competitors, all the way to safety and having enough R&D funding to ensure that your systems are safe, which again is something that a lot of other companies are lacking.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned like you have 7 active projects at the moment. So how do you identify and secure new projects?
Yeah, for us, again, we treat these as sales. Like a lot of startups and clean tech, especially, you can get caught up very easily by pilot projects. right? They do one pilot project and then they think, okay, great, now it's going to be commercial. And then for some reason, something doesn't really work out. And then they think, maybe I'll do a second pilot project at a different site and think, and it just
You're in
becomes
a
a
loop,
cycle.
like, yeah, never
Exactly.
ending loop of pilot projects. Yeah.
Yeah. And the goal here is really, yeah, maybe you can do one pilot project, but at the moment, we just took the philosophy of just commercial. Your very first project, it has to be commercial. You have to not just be deploying projects at a laboratory or in your backyard. You have to be deploying it at a customer site and making sure that your product is serving a customer need. In the end, I think, especially with a lot of climate becoming more hyped and more funding kind of everywhere for climate, it's easy for a lot of researcher types who just start developing product because it's a cool product. And honestly, it is a cool technology, but ultimately you're creating business now, and you can't create a business if you're not customer centric. So that's what we focused on, and taking it as almost sales. We send out our sales team. We make sure that we are listening to our customers. The customers tell us, "Hey, Moment, we really need these characteristics." And then we add those characteristics into our battery systems to ensure we're serving a need, not a want.
And do you have some future project that you're excited about that you can share with us here?
Yeah, absolutely. So we actually have 4 projects that we're super excited about. One of them, which is at Vancouver International Airport, so here in Canada, we're actually going to be deploying our systems for EV charging. And the reasoning is because,
Wow.
yeah, it's really exciting. Uh, the reasoning is because they've transitioned all the vehicles to electric for the airport. Now the problem is all the charging infrastructure is on the ground side, not on the airport side or the air side. So now what they really want is, a shipping container that's portable, right? We
Mhm,
have batteries
mhm.
inside it. We have a charger inside it, maybe even some solar, and we'll put it right into the middle of the airfield, right? And if they want to move it, they can move it anywhere. So it's very portable EV charging. So they don't have to drive the vehicles onto the ground side. Instead, they keep it all in the air side. Second one is actually 3 hospitals. So what we're doing is a lot of these hospitals, they have brownouts because these are hospitals. We serve what we call the commercial industrial industry. So we don't power an entire city, we power buildings or
Mhm,
neighborhoods instead.
mhm.
And within that industry, major problem is the grid is very old. We hear that a lot, right?
Yeah.
And because the grid's really old, as more and more customers are installing more solar, which actually puts load on the grid, also drawing more energy in general, they're using more energy. That puts a grid load on the grid. Unfortunately, those small pockets like neighborhoods or hospitals, they just black out or they brown out is what we call it. And these hospitals have experienced a lot of brownouts recently.
Why
And
brownout? Why brownout?
so essentially it's like blackouts, but for like a couple like hours
Okay, it
rather
doesn't
than,
last long, so like
yeah, it
it's
doesn't
not.
last super long. But the thing is, even if it's minutes, imagine lives are
Mhm.
at stake, right. You have
Yeah.
life sustaining equipment there. So that's really
Mhm.
why it's important to have batteries. They have a diesel generator. The generator sometimes doesn't turn on all the time, right? It's not 100% reliable. So having batteries plus a generator really helps with all these life important systems as well.
And what would you say that you're excited the most when you think about the future of the energy storage sector?
Yeah. I think in terms of the entire energy storage sector, I think it's just the rate of scaling for all companies,
Uh-huh.
not just Moment
Uh-huh.
Energy, but for all companies. The demand is huge. Like they're essentially, if you create an energy storage company with new lithium batteries, you can make a lot of money, right? And it's not just about money though. For us, it's about making that tangible difference. That's why we're powering homes and powering communities and powering buildings rather than powering entire city. Because we think that powering, smaller a little bit smaller, like 10 homes,
Mhm.
is still pretty big, but a little bit smaller applications is where the impact to human impact is. But really, there's so much demand that you can create utility scale or residential scale energy storage, and you can make a lot of money and create a lot of positive social environmental impact. But the key is just, can we scale fast enough, right? Can we build and manufacture fast enough? Which is why already we've been working with the U.S. Treasury and Department of Energy, where we're building the first Second Life Gigafactory over the next couple of years. So in other words, manufacturing over 1 gigawatt hour of stationary energy storage per year. And we're super excited about just trying to serve the demand with utilizing Second Life batteries.
Mhm. And for like other entrepreneurs who are facing similar challenges that you just mentioned, what advice would you give them based on your personal experience with your company?
Yeah, I think in all in clean tech especially, it's very capital intensive. Pretty
Yeah.
much even the software side, right? They're clean tech companies that are pure software. You need hardware to upload your software into solar or wind or batteries, right? So in the end, everybody here in clean tech is going to be working with infrastructure and energy. And I think the typical thing is, do not underestimate that aspect. Even if you feel like you're building a pure software company, you're more or less you're going to have to work with some hardware. And building that really strong team that's done it before is the number one key. Like at Moment, what we always say is hiring and building the best team in the world is the most important part. It doesn't matter if, they're a genius at their craft, but if they're just not genuine people and they don't care about the environment, they're just here for their own selfish reasons. Maybe they're mean to other people as well, and they're not kind. Those are the people that you do not want to build a company around, because when you're in clean tech, this is a marathon. It's not a sprint. You need a strong team that can, perform well over a long period of time, not, maybe genius individuals that can help you perform really in a short amount of time really quickly. But then, the team falls apart because you didn't hire genuine people that care about the mission.
I think it's also about the expectations. Like you said, it's a long run. Maybe some people, want to see the results really fast, and that's just ain't going to happen within the clean tech space. The adaptation of technology is slower than what's going on with other technologies who are not focused on resolving some problem issues with climate change. So yeah, I think that's another aspect that we could mention here. Sorry for interrupting you. But,
No,
can you tell me where can people reach out to you on socials, on your website, if they're interested to learn more about your technology, about your team, about your company?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can reach us at our main website, which is momentenergy.com. As well, we do have socials, Moment Energy on Instagram, as well as Facebook and LinkedIn as well. For LinkedIn, we love to hire. We're always hiring. We're growing. We grew the team from 4 people to 40 in just 3 to 4 years. And now we're just constantly looking to hire all the way up to 200. And then for projects, that's the website. And then, to see our amazing culture, we love hanging out together where, it's important to embrace climate and as an entire team and work together and just see how much fun we're having while we're trying to solve this climate catastrophe. You can find us on Instagram there as well.
Great. I have to share, I had a conversation with Tello. That's a company that's producing electric trucks. And they use Discord, and they created a group there. So they basically created a community of people who are interested in their products, where they can share their experiences. It's kind of, well, for me, Discord is a bit more intimate way of communication. So that's something that you can maybe think about.
Yeah,
Because my impression was that you want to hear feedback from the people.
totally.
So
Yeah, there are also a lot of really cool Slack groups across America for climate, which is great. I think that's really what's awesome about climate in general. It's very hard to find climate companies that are disingenuous, right? In the end, we're all in climate, not for the money. We're kind of here to solve this major problem, right? If we wanted to make lots of money in a short amount of time, we could have created some software fintech company. But instead, we're all in climate for solar, for wind, for batteries, because we just want to ensure that this world stays clean.
Well, I'm really feeling like hopeful when I meet people like you. So keep up the good work, and thank you again for being our podcast guest here.
Thank you so much for having me.
So yes, you guessed well. This marks the end of another episode of the Green New Perspective podcast. And I really hope you enjoyed the conversation with Edward Chiang, co-founder of Moment Energy. If you want to stay in touch with innovations happening within clean tech, nature tech, biotech, agri-tech space, you know what to do. Subscribe to our channel. Until next episode, bye.